How Delusion Destroyed Iran. That's the topic today. 12 years. That's how long it's going to take to rebuild Iran, according to Iran's central bank. And that if the war stops today. Okay. The loss has been $270 billion. That's the minimum estimate. So why are we here? Because the Iranian regime is completely delusional. If you looked at their social media over the last 45 days and their state media, they were completely decoupled from reality. They were all shouting, Iran is winning. We won. Meanwhile, the US and Israel were dropping thousands of missiles and destroying everything, every military base, the entire Navy wiped out, the entire Air Force wiped out, their radar systems, the air defense systems, all completely obliterated. Their factories, their steel plants, 70% destroyed. Petrochemical sector, 70% destroyed. So, how were they winning? The only way they could protect their power plants was to have a human shield. That's not winning. So, this whole thing, if you look at the strain of Iran since 1979, delusion has been the biggest theme, right? So it was delusion that made the Iranian regime think that Trump was not going to attack them. That's why Khamenei and all the 50 leaders or so came out of their bunkers and had a meeting, and boom, 150 jets came in, dropped missiles, and killed every one of them. And it was the delusion that made them think that they could take over the Strait of Hormuz. And now Trump has flipped it. And now their economy is going to be completely destroyed because they're going to lose all the export revenue, which was $300 million a day. They cannot import anything, including food, medicine, and other raw materials. They cannot get any weapons or components and stuff from China because of Trump's blockade. So they cannot even continue the war. They've lost most of their drones and missiles. They've lost most of their missile launchers and drone launchers. They don't have anything. But then you listen to like guys like the professor, I forgot his name. He comes on shows, Western podcasts and others, and says, Iran is going to destroy all the Gulf countries. If you live in the Gulf countries, you should leave. What kind of a delusional claim is that? Those countries have struck down 95% of the Iranian missiles and drones. And before the war, before the ceasefire, um, the Iranian regime was firing like 5 missiles at the UAE. It's not going to win. And the delusion is like unbelievable. Just before the negotiations in Pakistan, this guy Ghalibaf tweets, we want the US to remove all the sanctions. We want the US to pay war reparations. We want the US to evacuate all the military bases in the Middle East. This kind of delusion has lasted for decades, right? The whole death to America, death to Israel. And this delusion started with Khomeini, who thought he represented God on earth. He called himself the Imam, the infallible person. who is going to take care of the Muslim world until the 12th Imam shows up again. So he was like the substitute Imam for the world, right? And this delusion was the reason that he antagonized the US, right? If you go back to 1979, the US had no problems with Khomeini. The New York Times and BBC, they were all praising him, saying he's like the next Gandhi. He's going to be this amazing spiritual leader of Iran, but he won't be really involved in the day-to-day matters of the government. He will just be a spiritual leader on the side, on the side. But then he was this egomaniac. He called himself the supreme leader, and he put himself in charge of everything about Iran: the economy, the military, the foreign policy, banking, commerce, trade, oil, missiles, everything. He knew everything, right? But the fact of the matter is, he was totally an uneducated person who didn't know anything. But he made himself the supreme leader, and he thought he could defeat Iraq. So he started the Iran-Iraq War. And then after 9 years, he gave up. It was a humiliating experience. But then he thought that he could destroy Israel. He had slogans like on the road to Jerusalem. And this delusion made Iran create all these proxy terrorist groups, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, militias in Iraq, militias in Syria, supporting Hamas. Rather than taking care of the country, he had this like delusional Shiite empire, right, that would control the Middle East through his Shia empire. And then he'll be able to kick Americans out. He'll be able to kick Israel out. And then Iran will be the dominant superpower. All kinds of fanatical, delusional fantasies. And now, if you look at Iran, its GDP last year was about $450 billion. Okay, that's nothing. That's 0.3% of the global GDP. And they don't even have the technology to make the missiles and drones. All the technology, components, parts, everything is from China. Without Chinese Baidu satellite, these missiles and drones cannot fly. Without the special coating on the missiles from China, these ballistic missiles could not even be launched because they would get too hot and they would break down. Without the Chinese chemicals, these missiles would not even have fuel. Without the Chinese machines and the motors, the missiles and the drones would not even leave the ground, right? So they don't have anything. Without Huawei, the Iranian regime would not even have the internet surveillance system, the local internet, the telecommunications. Nothing would be there without Chinese technology. So how can it be a superpower? And they don't have, proper the Air Force. The only jets they have are all from the 1960s and the early 1970s, bought by the Shah of Iran. And they're so delusional, even if you look at the domestic aspect, the people don't like the regime. That's why the regime has to block 90 million people from accessing the internet, because the people hate the regime. Most people in Iran are not even Muslims. Okay, there are surveys by Western organizations that show only 30%, 30% of the Iranians are Shiite Muslims. Most people in Iran are not Muslims. They're just spiritual, atheistic, agnostic. They don't go to mosques, you know. There are people who have been to Iran during the Ramadan, and this Pakistani guy, he's like, I don't see a single Iranian worshiping or following the Ramadan fasting. So that's the truth. But if you go to Wikipedia, it will say 99.6% of Iranians are Muslims. Why? It's again a delusion. It's forced delusion because if somebody says they're not Muslims anymore, they will literally be killed by the Iranian regime. So people just put on their passport, Muslims, whatever. So the entire thing has been delusional. Their currency, when the Shah of Iran was there, the value of the rial was constant for 25 years. It was $1 was 70 rials. Boom, constant. And the whole country was prosperous. And now, fast forward to 2026, $1 is 1.7 million rials. From 70 rials to 1.7 million. And now, if Trump continues his blockade, where Iran cannot import, export, and then there are more sanctions, and if the UAE seizes all the assets of these corrupt IRGC people who have stored billions of dollars in the UAE banks to circumvent US sanctions. And now, if the UAE confiscates all those billions of dollars, the Iranian currency will be even more worthless. Okay, maybe it'll be 5 million rials per dollar or 10 million rials per dollar. So basically, the GDP of Iran is going to shrink by 50, 60, 70% this year, just in 1 year. It's going to be the Great Depression. They don't have anything. They don't have money. They don't have technology. They don't have military. They don't have any friends, right? The only two friends they have in the whole world are Russia and China, and they're not helping Iran. So this is, no money, no military, no technology, no friends, but they're still talking smack, right? They should just go for an unconditional surrender and end the war, right? Maybe the US will allow the top leaders to flee to Russia. Maybe the top 20 leaders can go to Russia, right? So that will be the most pragmatic and the realistic option. Because if they just continue to, huff and puff, then the US and Israel are going to bomb more. Maybe Trump will bomb a couple of power plants and the oil refineries. And then it will take 30 years to rebuild Iran, not 12 years. So, where does this delusion come from? It's mostly religious. They have, since Khomeini, the country has become a death cult. Like you see all these mothers in Iran go to some Khamenei organized events, and they raise their babies like toddlers, 5 months, 6 months old babies, and they go, I'm willing to sacrifice my baby for our supreme leader. So this kind of fanatical religious radicalism is the root cause of delusion. So let's see how it all ends. Thanks. Bye.